You ever notice how the ones you trust the most are often the ones who hide the sharpest knives behind the sweetest smiles? You pour your heart into them, protect them, guide them, and every night you go to sleep believing they're safe in your hands. And then a shadow moves where you least expect it. A secret, a betrayal, something small at first, almost invisible, and yet it cuts deeper than anything you imagined. The people you love, the ones you think are on your side, sometimes carry storms inside them, storms you never saw coming. And suddenly the ground beneath you feels like it's not yours anymore. Trust is a fragile thing. You build it carefully, brick by brick, over years, through countless small actions, through quiet moments that mean more than words could ever express. You trust because you love, because you believe in connection, because you assume the people closest to you will honor the bond you share. And yet, trust is not a shield. It is not armor. It is not a guarantee. It is a delicate thread stretching across your life, invisible until it snaps. You can nurture it, protect it, cherish it, and still, one quiet moment can unravel everything you thought was unbreakable. You pour your heart into others, sometimes recklessly, sometimes with precision, always hoping that the care you give will be mirrored back. You teach, you guide, you protect, you hold, believing that your faith in someone is a safe place. But trust does not operate on fairness. It does not bend to loyalty or effort. It exists independently, a silent contract between hearts, easily respected, easily violated. And when it is violated, it is not just the act that wounds, it is the revelation that the foundation you relied upon was never as solid as you believed. The shock is not the betrayal itself. It is the awakening to the fragility of the human bond. The strangest part is how betrayal often arrives quietly, almost imperceptibly. A look, a gesture, a decision made in the present, shadows, a choice that never reached the light of day. You notice it too late, after the damage is done, after the trust has been bent past the point of repair. It doesn't scream, it creeps. And in that creeping, in that subtle unraveling, you feel the weight of every assumption you made, every certainty you held, every moment you allowed yourself to believe that love alone was enough to safeguard against deception. It's not the act alone that hurts, it's the collapse of the invisible structure you built around your belief in someone. Trust is not binary, it is not absolute. It is not something you simply have or do not have. It is dynamic, fragile, tested constantly by choices and circumstances. And yet, people take it for granted. You do not notice the countless tiny decisions that affirm it, the subtle ways someone proves their loyalty, until one decisive breach shatters the pattern. And when that happens, every memory, every smile, every moment of confidence comes back with a sting. You replay conversations, reread gestures, analyze actions, looking for signs, evidence, proof that you missed the warning in plain sight. That is the cruel dance of trust and betrayal, the retrospective clarity that arrives only after innocence has been compromised. And betrayal is personal because trust is personal. You do not entrust your heart, your mind, your time, your energy to strangers with the same intensity you offer to those you love. The people you choose to let close are chosen carefully, or at least you hope so. And when someone abuses that closeness, it feels like more than a breach. It feels like a violation of the very framework of your life. It is intimate, because trust itself is intimate. It is voluntary exposure, a decision to open yourself fully, and believe that the other person will honor it. And when that belief is broken, the wound is not just emotional, it is structural, shaking the way you perceive relationships, loyalty, and the world itself. Yet, trust does not vanish entirely when betrayed. That is the paradox. You feel it, you mourn it, you question it, but the capacity to trust remains because it is part of the human condition. It is woven into our need for connection, for love, for understanding. The trick lies not in avoiding betrayal that is impossible, but in recognizing it, confronting it, and deciding how it shapes your future. Trust broken is painful, yes, devastating even, but it is also instructive. It teaches discernment, resilience, boundaries, awareness. It forces you to ask difficult questions. Who deserves access to your heart, and who does not? Who can be allowed into your world, and who must remain outside the gates? The betrayal of trust also exposes hidden strength within yourself. In the face of deceit, you discover endurance you did not know you possessed, clarity that had been dormant, and a sharper perception of human nature. You learn that betrayal is inevitable, but destruction is optional. You learn that the depth of pain is not necessarily the depth of ruin, but rather the depth of awakening. The fracture in trust does not merely break, it illuminates the structures that held illusions in place. It forces you to see clearly, to assess, to redefine the terms of intimacy and protection, and to choose more wisely whom to open yourself to in the future. Trust is fragile, yes, but it is also a gift, and even when betrayed, it carries lessons that cannot be learned any other way. It reminds you of the value of discernment, of observation, of attention to detail. It reminds you that closeness is earned, not assumed, that love is conditional upon respect, that the heart, while generous, is not a limitless resource. And through the pain, through the awakening, through the realization that even those we hold closest may deceive us, you discover that trust is not merely a bond with others. It is a reflection of how fully you are willing to live, to open, to risk, and ultimately to survive. Betrayal is a strange and insidious thing. It doesn't roar or announce itself. It creeps in quietly, almost imperceptibly, until the moment arrives when the impact hits harder than anything you could have imagined. You think you know someone, that you understand their motives, their heart, their loyalty. You believe in the patterns you have observed, the words you have been told, the promises that were made in confidence. And yet, betrayal does not respect familiarity or love. It strikes precisely where you feel safest, exploiting the cracks you never noticed, the trust you assumed was unbreakable, the bonds you believed were sacred. It's not just the act itself that wounds, it's the secrecy, the deception, the quiet manipulation that lets it unfold without your knowledge. The mind races when you discover it, replaying every interaction, searching for signs, questioning every word, every gesture, every intention. You wonder how you could have missed it, how someone could hide such darkness behind a familiar smile, a comforting voice, a relationship that felt unshakable. And the answer is simple. Betrayal thrives in trust. It feeds on the belief that people will act in good faith, that love itself is a shield. That is why it is so devastating. It is not only the deception, but the collapse of certainty, the unraveling of a world you thought was secure. And it doesn't arrive gently. Betrayal demands attention. It forces you to confront truths you never wanted to see, to face realities you were not prepared for. It strips away illusion and exposes character in its rawest form. You realize that people are not always who they appear to be, that intentions are not always aligned with actions, and that loyalty is often conditional. The shock of this realization is disorienting. It shakes the foundations of your understanding of human nature, relationships, and the fragile trust that binds lives together. It makes you question not just the betrayer, but also your own judgment, your own capacity for discernment, your own vulnerability. The emotional impact of betrayal is like a weight pressing on every part of your being. It manifests in sleepless nights, in restless thoughts, in a chest that feels heavier with every breath. You replay conversations, reread texts, reinterpret gestures, looking for clues that could have revealed the truth earlier. And with each recollection, a mixture of anger, sadness, confusion, and disbelief emerges. The complexity of emotions is overwhelming because betrayal is not a singular feeling. It is a cascade, a flood that mixes disappointment, grief, and a profound sense of violation. It challenges your capacity to process, to heal, to maintain equilibrium, to continue trusting in a world that suddenly seems unpredictable. Betrayal also forces you to reconsider boundaries. You begin to see clearly where you allowed access to someone who perhaps should never have had it. You reflect on what you shared, what you revealed, what you protected, and what you exposed. Trust is not an abstract concept. It is a tangible experience, a set of choices, a series of decisions about who is allowed in and who is kept at a distance. When betrayal occurs, those choices are scrutinized, reassessed, and adjusted. You learn the harsh lesson that closeness must be earned, that loyalty cannot be assumed, and that love, while generous, does not guarantee honesty or integrity. And yet, betrayal is not entirely destructive. In its cruelty, it teaches resilience, awareness, and insight. You discover strength you did not know existed, endurance in the face of emotional upheaval, and clarity in the midst of confusion. You begin to understand the difference between superficial connections and genuine bonds, between fleeting loyalty and enduring commitment. You see the hidden dimensions of human behavior, the motives that lie beneath surface appearances, the subtle signs that reveal true character. And in that understanding, there is power, the power to navigate relationships with greater intelligence, caution, and depth. The psychological impact of betrayal is profound because it forces a confrontation with reality, stripping away the comfort of assumptions and expectations. You realize that not everyone who smiles with you, who laughs with you, who shares your life, is aligned with your values or intentions. That knowledge is painful, yes, but it is also enlightening. It sharpens perception, hones judgment, and cultivates a wisdom born not from theory but from direct experience. Betrayal becomes a lesson in human nature, a catalyst for personal growth, and a reminder that vulnerability, while risky, is necessary for meaningful connection. Betrayal does not erase the past, but it transforms it. Every memory, every shared moment, every sign you overlooked is reinterpreted through the lens of truth. And in that reinterpretation, you find insight, understanding, and a recalibration of expectations. You learn that while betrayal wounds, it also educates, revealing the truths that were hidden behind comfort and familiarity. It forces vigilance, discernment, and a recognition that relationships require not only love, but also awareness, not only trust, but also perception, not only openness, but also careful observation. And in the aftermath, when the shock begins to fade, you realize that betrayal, while painful, has not destroyed you. It has exposed your vulnerabilities, yes, but it has also revealed your capacity to endure, to assess, to learn, and to rebuild. It is a test of character, a measure of resilience, and a proving ground for wisdom. The awareness gained from betrayal is not theoretical. It is lived, embodied, and seared into the psyche. It teaches the cost of misplaced trust, the importance of vigilance, and the undeniable truth that even those closest to us can surprise us in ways we never anticipate. Deception is a shadow that moves quietly through relationships, unseen until the moment it strikes. It hides behind familiar faces, behind smiles, behind gestures that once felt safe. And it thrives on the assumption that trust is a permanent fixture in human connection. You believe you know someone, that you understand their intentions, that the bond you share is unshakable. And then, in a quiet instant, the illusion fractures. Deception is not loud or dramatic. It is subtle, patient, and precise. It waits for the cracks you never noticed, the moments you let your guard down, the vulnerability you thought was safe. And then it exploits them without mercy. You start noticing the signs in retrospect. A word too carefully chosen, a hesitation that seemed inconsequential, a pattern that doesn't quite add up. At first, you question yourself. You wonder if you are imagining things, if paranoia is clouding your perception, if your trust has blinded you. But the truth of deception is relentless. It exists independently of your belief, independent of your hope, independent of the comfort you cling to. And when it reveals itself, the world tilts slightly. The ground shifts beneath you, and every memory, every interaction, every moment of faith comes into sharp relief, exposing the fragility of your assumptions. Deception carries its own rhythm. It does not demand immediate recognition. It whispers, it nudges, it lingers, all while shaping your reality from the shadows. And when you finally confront it, the pain is not merely in the betrayal, it is in the realization that you were unaware, that you were blind to the signs, that your perception of safety was built on sand. You feel the weight in your chest, the tension in your body, the restless energy that refuses to settle. Deception is intimate in its cruelty because it manipulates the very thing you value most, trust. It uses the familiarity you offered as a weapon, and the wound is both psychological and emotional. The mind struggles with deception because it is complex and layered. You replay conversations, scrutinize gestures, analyze timing, and probe for the moment when truth diverged from appearance. And in that analysis, there is both torment and revelation. You realize that people are not always what they seem, that intentions are often masked, that loyalty and love are conditional in ways you cannot anticipate. The intellectual comprehension of this truth is only the beginning. The deeper challenge is grappling with the emotional aftermath, the way it distorts perception, reshapes relationships, and forces you to reconsider the nature of connection itself. And yet, deception is not merely destructive. Its cruelty comes with lessons that cannot be taught through comfort or safety. It exposes vulnerabilities, tests resilience, and forces clarity. You learn where boundaries should be stronger, where attention should be sharper, where judgment should be tempered by caution. You understand that love and care do not guarantee honesty, that closeness does not ensure fidelity, that trust is a choice extended cautiously, continuously, and consciously. In the wake of deception, you discover capacities within yourself that were dormant: discernment, endurance, insight, and an awareness of human complexity that cannot be simulated or taught. Deception also teaches the necessity of observation. It makes you notice the small inconsistencies, the subtle patterns, the faint signs that were overlooked before. It sharpens perception and forces engagement with reality at a level that comfort never could. You start to recognize the duality of human behavior, the interplay between appearance and intention, between what is said and what is felt, between what is presented and what is hidden. This recognition is uncomfortable, but it is essential. It cultivates a vigilance that is not paranoid, but perceptive. A sensitivity that is not fragile, but informed. A clarity that is forged in the crucible of experience, rather than theory. And there is a personal reckoning in all of this. Deception forces self-reflection. How did I allow this? What did I ignore? Where was I too trusting? Where was I blind? The answers are not easy, and they are not pleasant, but they are transformative. They reveal strengths and weaknesses, teach the importance of boundaries, and illuminate the fine line between generosity of heart and vulnerability to manipulation. You begin to understand that deception is not only an act by another, it is also a mirror reflecting your own assumptions, choices, and patterns of belief. Ultimately, deception reshapes your relationship with trust itself. It does not destroy the possibility of connection, but it demands caution, attentiveness, and wisdom. It teaches that trust is a living construct, built continuously and maintained through awareness, observation, and experience. Every act of deception you endure leaves a mark, yes, but it also leaves a lesson. You emerge not broken, but recalibrated, stronger, and more attuned to the realities of human behavior. The betrayal embedded in deception is painful, relentless, and intimate. But within that pain lies the opportunity for awakening, for growth, and for the development of a perceptive, resilient, and discerning. Heart anger is a fire that starts quietly, almost imperceptibly, smoldering beneath the surface until it bursts forth in ways you never expected. It isn't always dramatic at first. It begins with a thought, a pang, a tightening in your chest when you realize that trust has been violated, that the people you cared for most have acted against you in secrecy. You feel it in subtle ways at first, the cold edge in your stomach, the way your hands clench without realizing, the restless energy that keeps you moving without direction. Anger is intimate because it is born from betrayal, and betrayal is the wound closest to your heart. People often try to ignore it, to rationalize, to calm themselves with logic or distraction. They tell themselves that holding on to anger will do more harm than good, that forgiveness is the path to peace, that moving on is necessary. But anger cannot be ignored. It is not a fleeting emotion. It is a signal, a message from your soul that something has been violated, that a boundary has been crossed, that a trust has been shattered. It demands recognition, reflection, and attention. And if denied, it grows in the shadows, building pressure until it demands expression, in thought, in word, or in action. Anger sharpens perception. It forces clarity in situations that might otherwise seem murky or confusing. When someone close betrays you, The shock alone is not enough. The mind begins to race, sifting through every memory, every interaction, every subtle sign that was missed. The anger that rises from this reflection is not merely destructive, it is illuminating. It exposes patterns, motives, and truths that were previously hidden. It awakens awareness and forces confrontation with realities you may have been too comfortable to face before. In this way, anger is both a reaction and a revelation, a twin-edged sword that cuts and illuminates simultaneously. The physical manifestation of anger is undeniable. Your chest feels tight, your pulse accelerates, your muscles tense, your mind races with scenarios, consequences, and responses. These are not malfunctions, they are indicators of engagement, of life responding to violation. Anger is the body's declaration that injustice has occurred, that boundaries have been crossed, that your sense of self has been threatened. It cannot be feigned, ignored, or silenced for long because it is rooted in authenticity, in the raw response of a being who recognizes a fracture in trust and refuses to remain passive. And yet, anger is often misunderstood. People fear it, believing that it is a sign of weakness, instability, or immaturity. They suppress it, hide it, or misdirect it, thinking that avoidance will prevent pain. But true anger, the kind that rises from betrayal and heartbreak, is a guide. It is a compass pointing toward what matters most to you, revealing the boundaries, values, and principles that define your life. When harnessed and understood, anger can become insight, motivation, and clarity. It teaches discernment, sharpens judgment, and ignites the courage to confront what cannot be ignored. Anger also demands confrontation with the self. It forces reflection on choices, assumptions, and judgments. How did you allow someone to betray you? Where were you too trusting, too lenient, too blind? What boundaries were unspoken, unobserved, or unenforced? These questions are uncomfortable but necessary. Anger carries with it the power to illuminate the gaps in perception, the overlooked signals, and the moments where vigilance was abandoned. And in confronting these truths, you gain self-awareness, insight, and the tools to protect yourself more effectively in the future. The psychological impact of anger is profound because it is intertwined with other emotions: hurt, betrayal, fear, and disappointment. It is not a singular experience. It is a symphony of responses that force engagement with the depth of human connection. You recognize the complexity of relationships, the duality of human nature, and the consequences of misplaced trust. Anger teaches the stakes of intimacy, the cost of vulnerability, and the value of awareness in a world where intentions are not always transparent and actions not always honorable. And yet, anger is not meant solely for destruction. It is transformative. It is a catalyst for understanding, a spark that lights the way to clarity, a force that reveals both your boundaries and your strength. It awakens resilience, forcing you to confront pain and channel it into insight rather than letting it fester into bitterness. It teaches that emotion, when acknowledged and understood, is a tool rather than a weapon, a guide rather than a trap. The fire of anger, when harnessed, illuminates the path forward, sharpens perception, and fortifies the heart against future violation. Ultimately, anger is a mirror reflecting the importance of trust, respect, and integrity. It reveals what matters most exposes hidden truths, and challenges complacency. It forces recognition of boundaries, teaches discernment, and cultivates vigilance. Anger is raw, intimate, and unflinching, and in its intensity lies the potential for awakening, self-discovery, and a deeper understanding of human nature. It reminds you that betrayal is not simply a wound, it is a lesson, and the fire it ignites can either consume or illuminate, depending on how you choose to engage with it. Disappointment is a quiet predator, creeping into your life with subtle steps that you barely notice until the weight lands fully on your shoulders. It isn't loud or demanding. It does not announce itself with fanfare. Instead, it seeps in through small cracks, through unmet expectations, through promises that were made and broken in silence. You expect honesty, loyalty, care, and love from those closest to you. And when reality does not align with your belief, the sting is sharp, immediate, and deeply personal. Disappointment thrives in hope, because hope creates expectation, and expectation is fertile ground for failure to manifest. You carry the anticipation of trust like a fragile glass in your hands. Each act of faith, each moment of belief, adds weight to that glass. And when betrayal or secrecy emerges, the glass shatters in ways you did not anticipate. The sound may not echo aloud, but it resonates in your mind, bouncing between memories, gestures, and the things you allowed yourself to believe. You replay every interaction, every conversation, every expression, searching for clues you missed. The pain is not just in the fact that someone acted against you, it is in the collapse of expectation, the realization that what you counted on was never guaranteed, that the foundation of trust you built was not as secure as you believed. Disappointment is layered. It comes not only from the act itself, but from the quiet, creeping awareness that your judgment failed, that your perception of people was incomplete, and that your faith in the bonds you cherished was vulnerable. You wonder how you could have been blind to the signs, how someone could hide motives behind smiles, behind familiar voices, behind the comfort of perceived loyalty. And in that questioning, there is torment, because the mind is a relentless analyst, refusing to accept surface-level explanations. It digs deeper, unearthing subtle truths, motives, and inconsistencies, forcing confrontation with the realities you had ignored or denied. The body responds to disappointment in tangible ways. Your chest feels heavier, your stomach tightens, your mind races in circles that refuse resolution. Sleep becomes elusive, meals taste bland, and the weight of unfulfilled expectations sits like an invisible stone on your shoulders. Disappointment is embodied, a physical echo of the emotional fracture. It reminds you that human connection is not always reliable, that the heart can be misled, and that even those closest to you are capable of secrecy and concealment. The intensity of the feeling is a measure of the depth of trust and love you invested, making the pain proportionate to the vulnerability you dared to show. And yet, disappointment carries a paradoxical lesson. It forces clarity in ways comfort never could. It reveals where boundaries were too porous, where discernment was lacking, where attention to detail might have prevented the shock. It sharpens perception, forcing recognition of subtle cues and patterns that previously went unnoticed. You begin to understand the duality of human behavior, the way appearances can mask intentions, the way words can conceal motives, and the way familiarity can hide the capacity for betrayal. In confronting disappointment, you gain insight into not only others, but also yourself, into the limits of judgment, and the necessity of awareness. Disappointment also cultivates resilience. Enduring it teaches that pain, while sharp, is not permanent, that the mind and heart are capable of processing betrayal and secrecy, and that growth is often born in the crucible of unmet expectations. You discover the strength to observe without naivety, to trust without blindness, and to engage with the world with both caution and courage. Disappointment teaches patience, not the passive waiting of inaction, but the deliberate observation, the thoughtful reflection, and the measured response that prevent repetition of past mistakes. It demands an understanding of human complexity, forcing you to see motives, actions, and consequences in a multidimensional light. And there is also the subtle gift of empowerment embedded in disappointment. You learn where your boundaries lie, what behaviors you will not tolerate, and how to safeguard your emotional investment. You recognize that control is limited, but discernment is limitless, that awareness is a weapon against repetition, and that the capacity to process hurt and continue forward is a testament to inner strength. Disappointment forces self-reflection. How did I allow this? Where did my expectations outpace reality? How will I adjust my perception, my boundaries, my trust moving forward? Each answer, painful as it may be, is a tool for fortifying the heart and mind against future violation. Ultimately, disappointment is a teacher disguised as suffering. It exposes the fragility of expectation, the vulnerability inherent in love, and the consequences of misplaced trust. It is not merely an emotional reaction, it is an instrument of awareness, insight, and growth. While the sting is undeniable, it carries lessons that shape judgment, fortify boundaries, and cultivate discernment. It reminds you that human relationships are complex, fragile, and unpredictable, and that the pain of betrayal and secrecy, though acute, can also illuminate the path toward understanding, resilience, and the conscious construction of trust and connection.